and we are now in the AI era. And what I would say is the strategies that grew the enterprise era and the cloud era cannot be applied to the AI. So something has to change.
Welcome to another edition of Not Your Father's Data Center. We are here in lovely Honolulu, Hawaii at PTC 2025. I am super fortunate to be joined by three friends of mine, guys that I met in the business and became friends, which is just awesome. We'll start on the far end with what I've already announced is the smartest guy here. When Martin found out that he and I were going to be the same team, he quit pretty quickly, so clearly knows what he's doing. Martin is the founder and CEO of LATAM Entry and resides in the great state of Nevada. Martin, give us a minute on LATAM Entry.
Yeah, absolutely. LATAM Entry is a company who's focusing on servicing the data center ecosystem in Latin America. As clients, we're consulting the subsea cable companies coming into Latin America on their edge strategy, land developers who want to enter the sector, along with publicly traded REITs in Mexico who want to join the sector, companies such as the fiber providers within countries that want to provide their routes for the data for the hyperscalers who are coming into country, understanding their edge strategy. So really a holistic view into the ecosystem and assessing where they have gaps to develop and implement their strategy. And really the goal is to make sure that our industry grows fast in Latin America and just doing my part to assist.
Awesome, Martin. We'll get into LATAM in much more detail. Next to Martin is David Liggit, another founder and CEO. You'll recognize I'm the only non-founder and CEO out here because I'm not as smart as these guys. David, as I think most of us know, the number one data center podcast in the world, and their host, David Liggit, out of the great state of Texas. David, tell us a little bit about how you got datacenterHawk rolling and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Raymond. It's great to be here with you guys. I'm David Liggit with datacenterHawk. We're a global market intelligence platform for the data center industry, for data center operators, investors, users, vendors, and consultants. And so we go out, figure out what's going on in the space, analyze it, put it on our platform so people can make better decisions. So I've been doing it now for 10 years. The datacenterHawk platform is 10 years old, which is a little hard to believe, but I now have the wrinkles and gray hair to prove it. And we're loving being in the space.
10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Man,
Boom.
Yeah.
that sneaks by you.
Yeah, it does.
I don't see any gray hair. They're coming. Yeah.
But how do you do it? You know, I'm 10 years as well. You know, look at me. I'm
The
bald
soak,
anyway.
right? It's the soak that
That's it.
So David's going to talk about more North America for us, and then my good friend Barro, CEO and founder of KevlinX. I do not say his last name because I don't speak Dutch and I always butcher it. Barro, tell us about Europe and tell us a little bit about you and KevlinX.
Yeah, well, two things. For the sake of saying it, it's Luitjes. It's very Dutch. So
See?
yeah, I'm
Does
trying
he
to
see?
learn. I'm trying to learn, but it's an education.
I'll fly KLM more often.
Yeah, 100%. And I stopped being a CEO because I found the perfect candidate for that. That's Eric Boonstra. He is an institutional candidate, and I'm focusing on the strategy of the company. So I founded KevlinX 10 years now ago. I'm a very rich, and I'm a banker. So sorry, don't blame me. I worked for Lehman Brothers. Again, sorry, don't blame me. And we focused from the very beginning on underserved regions, as we call them, back in the days. The strategy came up in 2014. So yeah, also 10 years. Yep. And we compared it to car parking. You know, if you're in the city centers, at some point you can't park your car anymore, it becomes the most expensive, and you have to go to other areas where there's space available or, let's say, reasonable rates. So that's what we did with our strategy of the company. So first project now being live in 2 months from now in Brussels, and have sites in different underserved regions in Europe. And happy to talk about it during this podcast.
Martin, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, where you went to school, and how you got the cojones to start your own business.
Been servicing the Latin America region for over 10 years. The last 6 feet on the ground in on the region. I'm from Mexico. I got all my bad habits in the U.S. where I was raised. However, I am a veteran of the U.S. Navy and also a veteran of a foreign war. That was the last war of the 5 fought in 1900s, and I was grateful to be part of that and be here.
Thank you for serving, Martin.
And thank you for being in the Marines. You know, they say that as you get older, you have 3-4 different careers, you know, and I've been fortunate enough that every career that I've touched and skill set that I've learned, I'm applying today. As far as new markets, speaking with the CEOs of fiber infrastructure, subsea cables, investors within the region, and leveraging all my expertise in the U.S., knowing the who's who in the Americas, and then becoming the conduits or the dot connector between Latin America and the U.S. And so I reside in the U.S. because I want to maintain my presence here and be close to the knowledge base. And then so when I'm here, I'm an ambassador for Latin America. And when I'm in Latin America, I'm an ambassador for the U.S. And I like to take advantage and leverage the best things of both regions and try to make something good for everyone.
Martin, thanks for giving us a little bit of your background. What year did you start LATAM Entry? What year was that?
May of last year, 23, 2 months after leaving Ascenti, I had to go walk barefoot in the forest of Tahoe and find myself and see what I was going to do. And LATAM Entry was available, so I thought we'd go with that. And it's been nothing but fun.
Again, thank you for serving. David, tell us a little bit about your background and how did you decide to start a data center information software platform, not the thing you go study in school. So tell us how that happened.
That's true. So you shared, but I'm from Texas. I went to school at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. So that's right, Sick'em Bears. Out of college, I spent some time working at a sports camp and then started in the real estate business in data centers in 2007. So just had the opportunity to join a team that was focused on the brokerage side of the business. I did that for 8 years and basically worked with end users that were sourcing that needed data center space. So we'd go find that for them. So we did, 1 cabinet deals, 1 megawatt deals, 10 megawatt deals, and then site selection. So there was a wide spectrum.
Cabinet deals. We all remember those.
Yeah, I know. It's a hard thing to understand, but they did exist.
Martin's talking about 11 gigawatts in South America. We're talking about cabinets. Practice? Talking about practice?
You're being too humble.
That's right.
Density 0.5 kW. Yeah. That's awesome.
So I did that for 8 years, had a great experience. But the problem that we found was that we never had great data to go do these projects. And everybody in our space knows this, but it's super capital intensive. And so what I found was that we were doing highly capital intensive projects with typically less data than other projects that were out there. So really felt the need that the opportunity was out there. So in 2014, I did my walk through the forest and decided to start datacenterHawk and just have had a great experience ever since. I mean, the 3 things we try to focus on in datacenterHawk is basically having deal back data. We want to track things that make the deals go. There's so much information in our space, but when you boil it down, there's several things that matter to make deals go. That's what we want to do. We want to do it with experienced team members. So we have people that have been in the space a long time that are looking at the data, analyzing the data, people that have done deals before. And that's really important when you're an investor trying to figure out where to go or what to do, having data that other people have been in the space look at. And then we want our updates to be as quick as possible. So we, on a quarterly basis, are talking about, hey, how big's the market? How much absorption's been done? What's pricing look like? We try to do that quickly just to keep up with the market because, as we all know, the market is changing
rapidly,
so fast.
Yeah,
and so I've just had such a great time doing datacenterHawk. And I would just say too, and I think people that are watching this that are in our industry right now, this is such a special time to be. What's happening is I don't even think we can really get our arms around. And I don't just mean the size, but I mean the significance, of what's happening in our space right now and the projects that are happening, not just in the U.S., but Latin America, Europe, APAC. I mean, it's a really special time to be in this space. And so I've loved doing it. It's been a great time.
Awesome to hear your background. Thank you for that. You mentioned a little bit how capitally intensive it is. It's why we invited the banker to come along, the former banker. Yeah. And that's why there's one of us on either side of it. If he says anything, we're a few stories up. Barro, if he gets out of line, we'll do what everybody wants to do with their bankers. We'll shove him over. Barro, let us know a little bit about your background, where you grew up, why I can't pronounce your last name, and how you started KevlinX.
Yeah, no, sure, absolutely. And first of all, thanks for having me. I started in my years in Amsterdam, born and raised over there. Amsterdam is, if you look at Europe, quite international, or at least we think we are, aside of our names, because that's bloody complicated, but that's something else. No, so I did a degree of engineering, but before that I tried to do law. My mom hated my guts because I was a terrible, terrible child. So she put me into the Navy, did for 2 years, served my country as well. And my drilling sergeant was the best I ever had. He was like my parent. my father, and he gave me the feel, the obligation to what's your goal, what's your end game in your life. So then I, of course, definitely decided I'm not going to do fucking law anymore. I'm going to do something else. So I worked for Easy Harris for a couple of years as a principal on the real estate side, and then I was asked by Lehman Brothers. Yeah, I know. Huh? To be.
We're not laughing at you.
No. I'm more, let's say, afraid still the people are being furious, but that's something else. But luckily they tend to forget. And we had a European real estate fund of approximately 10 billion euros. So quite an okay fund. In the end, I was COO for that fund. And in our portfolio, we had mainly offices, some housing, residential, and a bunch of small logistics. And why I'm touching on this is that we had a couple of assets in Amsterdam, and one of them was the dealing room of ING Bank. And at that time, we knew, of course, what trading was, but they moved out, and they had 2 other buildings. And they said, yeah, this is a data center. So we're all like in the underwrite, what the fuck is a data center? And a computing center. And then parties came to us, said, we want to rent it. And we're like, are you sure? IKEA is renting one of those spaces. Are you sure you want to do it? So let's you do that. That's fine. So they signed up for it. And in the end, that company was bought by Equinix in 2007. And Equinix came to us and asked, can you do an investment because we want to upgrade the data center? I said, sure, what do you need? 65 million. Now we're talking about billions. But at that time, 2007, that was a lot of money. I said, sure, but explain to me like a 4-year-old, what are you going to do? So, 7, old, yeah, I know. So they explained me, was like, yeah, okay, I gave a call. I said, it's fine, do that, it's all good. And but I wanted to know more about the data center space at that time. I said, what are you doing? Because for us, it's just real estate. Huh? Now we have cabinets, we have racks. I said, what is a rack? And they're like, no, it's a server of a customer. I said, okay, that seems interesting. So I learned a lot from a guy called Kevin Norcott. He was the COO EMEA at that time at Equinix. And years later, he reached out to me and said, I want to stop at Equinix. I want to create an own company. I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. Let's talk about financing. And then we started to look for other locations. And he came up actually with the idea, focus on unserved regions. So Kevin Norcott is the guy who came up with this initial idea. I said, yeah, sure, make that happen. And he passed away in March 2015. And I promised 2 things. 1, I'll take care of your wife. And secondly, I'm going to execute this mission and make it a great success. But we're now building a first big data center campus in Brussels. And we have sites in Spain, in Italy, in Austria. So we're quite successful. We're in a fortunate position that we have Macquarie as our investor, a good investor to work with. And yeah, we have a great team. We have a good leader now with a lot of experience from the data center industry. So I'm very, very, very excited about what we're doing. Yeah.
So Barro, thank you for telling the story about how you gave KevlinX the name. I was going to ask you if you didn't do it, so thank you for doing it. 1, 2, thank you for serving your country, and we really appreciate hearing your background. So guys, we're going to get into all kinds of issues in the data center business, but start thinking now. We're going to ask you to predict the gigawatts of data center deals signed in your respective region in 2025. And it does make me cringe a little that we now say gigawatts. But I think that's appropriate. I will tell a funny story. I was meeting with one of the hyperscalers, and we were talking about the incredible growth. And I said, we doubled last year from 3.5 gigawatts to 7.5 gigawatts. We can't double. The numbers are too big, right? Law of big numbers. We can't double, every year. And he laughed and he said, oh, Raymond, we'll do 7.5 ourselves next year. So it's a crazy time to be in our business. Yeah. There are lots of downstream problems that get caused by that. But Martin, talk about the growth in Latin America. What you think are the big trends coming down there, and what are some of the big hurdles we got to worry about as we try to enter into that market down there?
Yeah, certainly. Well, this is like Latin America, first and foremost, it's a very big region comprised of like 30 different countries. The top 6 countries comprise of like 93% of the population. So from a U.S. standpoint, there's 340 million. Brazil, 220, Mexico, 120. Just Mexico and Brazil alone make up the U.S. population, right? And then the rest, you've got Colombia, Argentina, and Chile. So we'll kind of focus on that. But the primary countries to really look at is Brazil. Marco CEO for Scala was just at an AI summit. There's a bill right now that's about to be passed by the other part of the House. It's pretty much done. Prior to that bill, it was projected that Brazil would have up to 3 megawatts by 2030. Right now they have 800 megawatts. the projection is that
So
with
3 gigawatts, right?
3 gigawatts
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
2030.
I just want to make sure. He said gigawatts. Yeah, I just want to make
Yes.
sure.
Thank you. And I was thinking in Spanish, so I got a little bit confused. But according to Marcos, the passing of this bill is really for the use and implementation of AI throughout the country. He projects that that's going to be 11 gigawatts by 2030. So really 3 times just by the government putting emphasis on the law. Colombia's a sleeping giant. You know, all the major players have purchased. They have land banks. There was a big push to enter Colombia, and then really, I think that people became a little bit dissatisfied with the investors on the government, current government. There's about a year and a half left of that government. A lot of infrastructure investments being done in Colombia. Subsea cables are coming into Colombia. It's now become the 3rd largest subsea cable country in the Americas. Mexico is poised. Right, Mexico came to the challenge that all the markets around the world have, and that's energy. Everyone goes into the market, and the local region is caught flat-footed on their energy strategy, right? So now there's momentum on that. Just this week alone, Amazon opened up their cloud region. They announced it a year ago, 1.3 billion, 3 billion in investments for the next 15 years. It's only like 300K. You know, a year, but still, right? And so the new president of Mexico was present in that announcement. She's very, very much green energy. Everyone in the energy sector is very optimistic that the president is going to up that. Is now that she has focused on the data center industry, we're very hopeful there.
Martin, great job telling us about Latin America. David, give us your insights in North America. Yeah. What do you think the North American market's going to look like? You know, we can talk about 25, we can talk about big picture, but you alluded to it in your intro that there's big things happening. So talk a little bit about North America.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about our space too, you know, we talk about cabinet. It's like we've gone from cabinet to campuses, millions to billions, CPUs, GPUs, and megawatts to gigawatts. I mean, that is the transformation that's happening in our space, and I think we're seeing that right now play out in the largest way in North America. For a number of reasons, I'm not sure that will always be the case, but right now, that is where these very large projects are going. You know, when I step back and think about like the why is it happening, it's really the bet that these companies have made on AI and what they believe it will be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. You know, and you mentioned the absorption numbers, you know, and I think you're right on, like 4 gigawatts in 2023, 7 gigawatts, 6.5, 7 gigawatts in 2024. What that number gets to be honest, in 2025, I think will certainly be higher. The question mark will be, you know, how much pre-leasing can be done and how comfortable customers are signing a lease with whatever that timeline is to get the power. You know, and the longer that timeline stretches, the less signings there are because, you know, they want to be able to get that power as quickly as possible. So we're very bullish. You know, the markets that have seen the growth in the U.S. are your typical ones, Northern Virginia, Chicago, Dallas, Phoenix. Atlanta is seeing a lot of growth. And then we're also seeing like continual growth to tertiary markets. And that's really the question mark is like, how secondary will the secondary markets become? And we probably see that in other regions too. But like, you know,
So we're past tier 2, right? I mean, are we to tier 4? I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to hear from you, right? We all know tier 1s, you just routed them off. We all know tier 2s. How far are we going?
We're certainly in the tier 3 category, you know, and there's good reasons for it. I mean, obviously power availability and a path to not just power, but a lot of power is certainly a key driver to take these development projects to other regions. You know, the question mark a lot of times with these movements to these other territories is you solve the power challenge, but do you create other challenges when you go to these areas? Like, you know, some of these areas that don't have contractors and workforce, you know, how do you build 3 gigawatts in a city historically that has never seen data center development? And so it's certainly solvable. It's just a different path than, you know, having 3 campuses in Northern Virginia and rotating your contractor, you know, building by building.
Give me your top 2. Wow, I didn't think there'd be a gigawatt data center there. Market.
You know, Mississippi is
okay. We'll give you that one.
That's right.
Okay, we'll give you that one.
You know, that's certainly one. You know, there's just been, I think, like a $10 billion investment in Louisiana.
Yeah.
That's another state that's seeing growth. And I think in the U.S. real estate market for 15 years, as long as I've been in it, has always operated in a very like similar manner from a geography perspective. And 3-4 years ago, it totally shifted. There's still massive investments taking place in those markets, but there's also significant, billions and billions and billions of dollars going to places we've never seen it go before. And so I still think that like the major data center markets will continue to see a lot of growth. There's a lot of reasons why, but if you want to solve the AI, if you want to be a player in AI 5, 10, 15 years from now, you've got to go other places because that type of power doesn't exist on the timeline needed, to solve the end user need. So anyway, very bullish about North America. We think we'll see, more growth next year than we've ever seen before, and it'll just be fun to watch.
Fun to watch for sure. All right, Barro, so we heard about LATAM, we've heard about North America. Give us your take on where the growth is going to happen. From my lens or my chair, David alluded to it, there's a lot going on in North America. We don't see the scale happening yet in Europe, but we'd love to hear, when you think that scale's coming and where, what is tier 2 and tier 3 in Europe, and is that happening?
Yeah, a good point. Also a question for you, but that's later maybe. What we're dealing with in Europe is that we have 27 countries, and the UK, of course, clearly. The UK recently said, let's go for data centers, be open again. Because why? AI, workforce, all that stuff. So they're okay, but not in London. I think what we have to accept, the fact is that Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, and even Dublin, they're anti-data centers. It's gone. Regulation, all this stuff you have to deal with. So what you see is a shift in markets where people do the large deployments. And you see two kinds of clusters, the Northern cluster and the Southern European cluster. And so you see big developments in Italy, in Spain, and some interesting development as well in Greece now. For instance, Greece, the grid owner is still very welcome to welcome other parties and coming in and use that grid owner. Whereas if you compare it with Spain, initially we're like in Madrid, come over, but now you have to pay 40K per megawatt to even reserve the power. We have a site in Barcelona. I'll give you a few challenges that we're having over there. If you want to have a conversation with the grid owner, in this case grid operators Endesa, you say, listen, can we talk about availability on substation level? First do the application. And you're like, but I need to have some sort of degree of comfort that I actually can do something with that. Yeah, we can't, do the application and you'll see the outcome. Whereas what happened in third areas and fourth regions, the government of Zaragoza said, guys, you want to self-perform? Come over 300, 400 megawatts. We want you to come over. So this is also, I think, we can link it to things like, the data centers will go where the subsea cables land. Latency is less important. Yep. Access to power, speed to power, it's so instrumental in Europe. And a couple of countries in Europe are still welcome. We want to welcome you. Whereas in Amsterdam, for instance, we have a ban on data centers. We have a ban on the critical economic factor, the third economic factor of our nation. Yeah. It's bizarre. Therefore, I think if you look at the Americas right now, it's growing fast. APEC, bizarre. EMEA, Europe, it's very challenging.
Yeah, and I was going to say on the regulation side in the U.S., that's something that I'm glad you mentioned that. It'll be really interesting to watch because, to your point, community will take the growth, and then there's a moment where they go, it's too much. And now the project sizes, you can do one project that's too much, and so I think the tone, and you probably have a really good opinion on this too, is like the tone in the U.S. in some places is shifting where people aren't as interested in data centers, not just from a power perspective, but from a community perspective. So there's a lot of education on probably all of our parts in the industry, to help people understand why these investments make sense. But there are some places I think that you'll see in the next 3 to 5 years, certainly in the US, that will really put a pause on data center.
Yeah, and we also have this whole convincing thing in Europe, where you have to convince not only, let's say, the prime minister, but also the local municipalities, where you have to still explain what a data center does. Okay, that's fine, 80% of people doesn't know what we are doing, and that's fantastic because we can make a fortune. But what we see is that if you explain to them, this is a data center, we store racks, customers are coming in, they're like, okay, what's your employment rate? And you say, well, you have direct employment, we have the contractors, the Brussels project, and there are 200 people working on the site. But they say to you, no, but that's variable, that doesn't count because it's for a year and then they're gone. We have an office of 5,000 square meters. We lease it to third parties, so in the end the customers are in that office, so in the end you create direct employment of over hundreds of jobs. So it's a lot of repeating explanation what you got to do in Europe to basically be successful. And again, if you look at Italy, for instance, a country, Terna, the high voltage grid owner, is very, very proactive in creating new substations. Basically, make sure that you get your power. Compass is there as well. Very good choice. Whereas, as I said, Madrid is now like, yeah, we don't have power. Sort it out yourself. Good luck. And you see that, therefore, that Madrid, I think, is lacking in take-up. Whereas Zaragoza, as I said, is booming now. Yeah. So it's a very interesting time.
Martin, will you tell us a little bit about how this power question that both David and Barro have raised is getting handled in LATAM? There's generation, there's transmission, there's distribution, all challenges in the two big economies. I'd love to hear how it's going down in LATAM.
Maybe we should focus on the positive things of the energy side, right? And kind of like in Europe, every country is a different government and it's a different challenge. And certainly, in Brazil, it's really the leader of green energy across the Americas with almost 97%, which is really a big factor for AI growth, especially with this new bill. Some of the challenges, just the tariffs of sending equipment down there if you're coming in from the U.S. and trying to establish it. But if you're a Brazilian company, you're golden on the tariff piece. Energy side in Mexico, it's not private, it's a public, right? It's owned by the federal government, right? And it's just not one grid, it's many different grids that make up the network, right? And so in Mexico, I think everyone started concentrating in Queretaro, which is right outside of Mexico, 3 hours Mexico City, earthquake area. And so everyone jumped in there, next Virginia of the Americas. But there are now regions, it's saturated. And so now everyone's looking for new states, new regions within Mexico, even though it's a federal grid. Every state has their own power generation and transmission. Yeah. Just in September alone, at Data Center Dynamics Cancun, and they announced a 250 megawatt project, right, for AI. And so that's a positive thing. You've got the government itself. They are promoting a couple of gigawatt solar plants in northern Mexico and Sonora, which according to stats has got the highest solar index in the Americas. So we think there's a big plus coming from that. The challenge now is the government opening up their aperture. I wouldn't say laws, but give the data center a break from a standpoint of being able to generate their own energy. It was so great to see the new president be part of the Microsoft announcements because she was in Querétaro at the heart of the things. And we believe, typically the way it works in Mexico, it's a 6-year, one term, right? And so the first 2 years of the president is really to kind of carry the agenda of the previous presidency, if it's the same party, in this case it is. And then after that, they pay respect to the previous president and they go off and they do their agenda. And we're very optimistic that she's going to open up the floodgates on self-generation for consumption.
All right, guys. So power as an industry, we're an awfully big customer of the power, and all of us have alluded to at some point, hey, it's one of the constraining factors. How do we generate enough? How do we serve enough? I think that as our industry continues to consume so much power, that we've got to be viewed as a partner to the power providers and a partner to the networks. I think it's we've got to figure out how do we work together and serve with instead of serve me. And we'd love to hear in your regions how you guys think about how we partner with the power providers, how we partner with transmission, how we partner with distribution, and maybe even a brief minute about renewables. So Martin, tell us a little bit about the way to think about consuming power in LATAM.
Yeah, well, once again, every country is different, but I'll give you an example in Mexico. When we first came in as a data center industry, at the end of the day, there's probably 10 different companies right now that are there. We were all independently going to the country or to the region for power. We all realized that we had issues or difficulty when communicating our needs. We ended up going to the government saying we're one voice, we're servicing 3 clients at the end of the day. And what's the country's strategy? This is, well, we don't have one yet, but we're working on it. And it says, great, why don't we go ahead and talk to everyone and find out what the problem is and do a strategy, or I'll bring everyone to the table and we'll talk about the strategy. And so now there's a Secretary of Energy for the state of Queretaro, the first one in the country. It's been really, really helpful in helping develop and implement a strategy as to how we're going to grow the energy sector within the region. And then, the power consumption for data centers is just not for us. It's for society, right? The governments have two options. They either develop their own data centers to provide a digital infrastructure for the countries, or they allow our industry to come in and do that. Now, a data center, it may consume power, but every day we're benefiting from that. AI, autonomous, medical, your bank, right? It's all about infrastructure.
So Martin, my kids ask this question. I tell them, look, everything that's on your phone is in a data center. Everything you're doing on your phone happens in a data center. Is I think an easy way to explain.
And yeah, I mean, when you take a plane, I mean, it's required for traveling and transport of goods. You can't have any goods without transportation, but you don't see it like so integrated within your life. And so I like to think of it as yes, we're consuming power, but we're distributing benefits to society as a whole, not just I'm going to take a plane once a year, kind of thing. Yeah. Right. And so I think that's really where our benefit is as an industry. And I'll be glad to educate markets on bringing in this infrastructure and educating them on what's the best way to partner up on energy, because the ultimate goal for our data center industry is to serve.
So Martin, we use the phrase in North America, right, that there's a technology gap, access to technology. I think this speaks right to it, right? You have to have the digital infrastructure for there to be internet everywhere and all the applications. So David, talk to us a little bit. How do you guys, I know you're not in the service provider business, but you're near us and near all of our customers. So how do you think about our industry's story around power?
Yeah, when I got into the data centers back in 2007, and I would call that the enterprise era. This is banks, insurance companies, technology companies maturing their infrastructure footprint, figuring it out. In about 2014, 15, we entered the cloud era, and that was, you started seeing availability zones and cloud growth, and we are now in the AI era. And what I would say is the strategies that grew the enterprise era and the cloud era cannot be applied to the AI era. So something has to change. Yep. And that's really a global, maybe it happens for all of us. But what I think has to change in the U.S. is it's not a deal by deal thing anymore. It's not what site can give me 36 megawatts. Great, let's just go get it and go. You've got to take a more like a top down approach. Yeah. You've got to think about relationship with the government. You've got to think about relationship with the community. You got to think about relationship with the power provider, and it's more of a holistic, decision-making process that will allow the portfolio growth needed to match the demand. And that's what's going to have to change. And I think it is changing. I think we're starting to see that. People are thinking much more larger, and with those large decisions, there's just a lot more to evaluate. So I think that will be the shift in the U.S. to make this happen. But, the U.S. market's about 38 gigawatts of power when you think about leasing and companies that own and operate their data centers. We're tracking like over 100 gigawatts of planned projects. So that growth is only going to be allowed if we have the supply to meet it. And that's going to be a big question mark. And also too, like how AI is monetized, do the business models really support the growth expectations that we see? So I think those are the things that will have to shift.
Yeah. All right, Barro, 27 countries. You guys have a little bit more of a challenge over there to get everybody to row the same direction. Tell me how the data center industry partnering with those different countries and all the different governing bodies over there to get enough power to lay the digital infrastructure foundation.
Yeah, I can say it's challenging. When I started the company in 2014, or the idea basically, I'm from a special background, so I have this social holistic view on when running a company, starting a company. It's not only about EBITDA. Investors will not like it, but you have to do something back for the society because you're creating something. So you have to share and make clear to them, what are you doing? What does this mean for society? So I said, a couple of things. When talking to the Brussels local municipality, yes, we're going to do a data center. Of course, the question, what is a data center? I said, we're going to create employment. We're going to align with schools. We're going to educate them what this is. We're going to create, let's say, blue-collar jobs for people, let's say, that don't have the highest chance of succeeding in working life. And also, we're going to align with the parties in our area to see how we can source and find the solutions for the excess heat that we produce. So they asked me, what does that mean? I said, well, district heating. District heating is something very European that you can do in Eastern Europe, in Mid-Europe, North less, because densities of cities. But it's a good thing. And at least then you can find a solution on reusing that heat and to a certain extent the power. I do believe, however, that Europe is a very, very dense area. And getting hundreds and hundreds of megawatts somewhere at some point is just difficult. And therefore there will be a shift. And the capacity will travel to where the power is. Sure. And that's the northern cluster and the southern European cluster for now. And and as I said, it will have an impact on the tier 1 markets, as we call them, FLAP D, and we'll move more the capacity to those areas. And this goes. I hear what I now observed in this last 10 years when I started the company. What I've learned and had is in 2014, I heard people talk about hyperscale, cloud. It was like, but there's still enterprise, right?
Sure.
And now it's AI. And don't get me wrong, I think it's serious, but we have to think of this mixture, holistic solution on finding that for the parties, your customers, as you want to serve. And this also will have an implication on the power. And what I think what will happen ultimately in Europe is just find your land close to the grid. Do it like that.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me at PTC. Not a bad place to have to do a conference every year. At Compass, we like to say data centers done differently. So give me one snippet on what's different, what's unique when folks want to go to LATAM and they want to talk to somebody. Martin, something unique about LATAM Entry.
Well, first of all, if you're thinking about going to Latin America, if you want to get a big picture perspective, listen to datacenterHawk on a quarterly basis. Steve Sassy's doing a phenomenal
cross
job.
promotion. It's good. It's good.
No. You got to give credit where it's due.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the things that I do that LATAM does differently is that when you talk to me about a region, I am looking at it from which subsea cables are coming in, what fiber infrastructure is there, what's the strategy of new strategy or new fiber routes. And so as you speak to me about data centers, if you're a subsea guy, I'm thinking edge strategy, kind of like a Myrtle Beach, what's going on in Europe. Why are you doing it just a half a megawatt edge? You got to think of 5, 10, convincing them on that. And then I'm already thinking of fiber routes. Or if we're looking at investors that want to go, that are in commercial real estate or residential, they want to enter our space, educating them on what the data center is and who's who, what's what. And so whatever industry, part of the infrastructure you're coming in for the ecosystem, I'm able to give you what the gaps are, but connect you to the people that are going to help you execute. So let's meet the guys that are in the US that are doing the same thing, go get ideas from them. Maybe the guy from the US wants to partner up with you, right? And so really our key service is bringing in the resources that you need to help fill the gaps that you have for you to complete your strategy, but most importantly, help you implement.
If you want to enter South America, doing it differently with LATAM Entry. All right, David, datacenterHawk, the digital infrastructure, information superhighway, the man behind the screen, tell us what's done differently there at datacenterHawk.
Yeah, really 3 things. I mean, the deal back data, our experienced team, and then just the fast updates that we make. I mean, that's really what we feel like makes our company different, and we really work hard every single day to make those things happen. So all the data on our platform looked at by people in the industry that have been doing it for a long time, and to help people make better decisions.
Awesome. All right, Barro, KevlinX, done differently, data centers in Amsterdam. Give us a snippet on what's different about KevlinX.
Yeah, well, we don't focus on tier 1 markets. So we from the very beginning, we said focus on the underserved regions. That's also in line with our investor. It's one of the reasons why they stepped in. And of course, with all respect, it's the biggest infrastructure fund in the world. So they're doing quite some things well. What I, as I said earlier, is I love to educate people about the business, because why? I learned it also in my doing banking life. And if you only can make sure that 1% of the population in the country itself, especially the underserved markets, that they are aware of what you're doing, then you're not their enemy anymore. You're like, no, we're servicing you. We want to find sustainable solutions. We use a part of your power, but there's plenty left. Let's do this together. And that's my view for the coming years is basically to educate people, to help them, let's say, understand what we're doing. I don't care how many schools come over. You know, like facilities where the old people are. Come in, I'll show you what a bloody rack is. You know, this is a rack. This is what helps you going on the simple internet. Or when you want to text on that WhatsApp with your niece or something like that. That's what I love to do.
So, Barry, you said where the old people are. You weren't referring to me, right? I just want to make sure.
No, I'm talking about myself.
Okay, it's okay. Good. All right, just want to make sure. Well, guys, PTC is an awesome time to get together. I've been in the business 10 years. I would just tell each one of you, Barro, thank you for hanging out with us. David, thank you for coming. Martine, thank you for coming. Not only do I get to be friends with really amazing guys that are super smart and doing really cool things for our planet, but guys that are just great fellows to be around. So I'm so grateful that you guys joined us, and we look forward to spending some time here trying to help the world build out digital infrastructure. Thank you, guys.